what do I need to know, week one? You've done it. You've had the year. If you could rewind the year and tell us what we should have known on week one.
Yeah, I know. It's a funny question because I think there's a lot to be said for it's a very steep learning curve, and that's part of the process. But trying to think back now with things that stuck to me, I actually remember you saying, this is only 1 year, this program. So there's so much to be said for kind of giving it your all, I think. And like, it's not like you're going into college again for 4 years. Like, this is 1 year. So I just think you should really put in as much as you possibly can to it. And especially with the situation we're in now, like, I know for me, I did kind of the last quarter or third of the program entirely from home. And some of that was on complete lockdown. And I remember kind of looking at all the assignments and being like, oof. But then I was kind of like, you know what, I might as well just absolutely do these as best as I can. And I think that's kind of a good attitude to look at the whole program. To just, work really hard, and you will have time for other things. That's not to say completely give up your life, but you are only here for 1 year, so you might as well be able to look back on it and say, I did the best that I could.
The program is kind of half and half, kind of individual work and group work. Any tips on group interaction and setting themselves up in teams and stuff?
Yeah, like I think something I would say is know your strengths, and getting that out at the start is probably a good thing. But not in the sense that, like, if I'm bad at maths, I'll never touch the math stuff. Like, you should be able to get involved in all things, but at the same time, people do have natural strengths, and you probably should play on that. Like, I try and think back, like, to my group projects, I would have done a lot of maybe the editing at the end and wordy kind of stuff, and someone else might have done any figures and things like that. And that does work really well. I have a few notes in front of me here. What am I thinking? Um, yeah, on group things, I would say participate is a huge thing. And this is not only in group projects, but also in the classroom. Because I know we would have done a lot of discussion, and that only really works if everyone is kind of open. And that can be hard, like if you are shyer. And I know there'll always be bigger personalities in the class, but you get so much more, and it's a much richer experience if you have everyone's opinions and everyone kind of contributing to class things. I'd say, yeah, just be prepared to learn from each other as well. Like, I look back and, like, I think it was Catherine who showed me, she was like, oh, there's this thing called Canva that I use. And I had never heard of that. And that ended up being like what I used, week in, week out with all of my projects and presentations and stuff. And even like little tricks on Microsoft Word and things that will become second nature, but you'll only absorb from someone else being like, oh, I use this, I use that. So like, there's a huge amount to be said. Group work can be difficult. Like, I had come from an undergraduate where I'd done 100% of the work by myself. So it can be a change, but it's such a good change. And especially like starting work now, like, I don't do anything alone. Nothing, I don't sign off on anything by myself. Like, it's such a practical skill.
We've just really finished your program. You've just handed your major reports in, but you're
Yeah.
working already. Where are you now? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm on my third week in Vodafone. So I'm on their graduate program as corporate security specialist. And I was
Wow.
laughing because like specialist, something that I'm just starting off is funny. But it's great. And like, I wouldn't have gotten into this program, the graduate program, without project management.
Right.
I kind of highly doubt. And it's been great. And like, even I was going to actually let you know the other day, in like 1 hour, I was asked to do like a stakeholder map, a project plan, all these like terms that like we learned about every week in lectures, but they were just being thrown out, not presuming that I knew them, because I could have gone back and said, explain this, but already knowing when people say, we need to get a project plan going and identify our stakeholders, and I could be like, yeah, can do that.
Fantastic. So actually, the stuff you took on in the program, you've directly using kind of
Oh
straight
my
away
God,
in work.
big time. And even in like the 2 weeks that before I started and after we handed in the major report, I was helping out with some friends who are in it. They've set up a startup. and they were doing tender documents and requests for proposal, which was all of procurement
Procurement
stuff.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, like you don't, sometimes you're learning things and it's kind of hard to realize where it might fit in, but it all does. It's also practical.
Yeah. I think I told you at the beginning of the program, trust the process, didn't I? Because you
Yeah,
don't always see where all the bits kind of slot in until maybe the end when
yeah. So there is an element of that. Like you could go back and tell yourself stuff in week one, but it's only maybe at the end when you'll look and be like, God, that was maybe really tricky for me at the start, but now I kind of see where that comes into like real world application.
yeah, yeah. So any kind of last hints and tips for everybody, things that they should think about, or anything else in your notes that we
What
didn't
did I
kind of
have?
cover?
Yeah, one thing I had was not only engage in classes, but engage with the content. So like do the readings because everything will make a lot more sense if you
Yeah,
do the readings. It really will. Um, Another thing I had, this might sound a bit strong because it's not completely true. I had your work kind of represents you, and it doesn't. Like projects aren't the be all and end all. But I think it is good to go in and, hand stuff in and, be happy that your name's on that. Because it is a little mini representation of kind
yeah.
of you and what you can do. And that's not to say that if you get a bad grade that can almost be more helpful because it'll help you improve.
Mm.
But that would be one.
Did you find in the program that you could ask questions, that it was okay, that it was safe to
Yeah.
fail or to not do as well as you might have done or whatever?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one thing I would say as well. If you have a question, ask during class time. Like, don't, if you have a question, you're like, oh, maybe I'll just email after. It's so much more beneficial for everyone because then everyone gets to hear the answer and you won't be clearing it up with someone later. Um, there really isn't stupid questions. And even since I've started work, people keep telling me that. And when you don't ask the question, it holds you back further
Yes.
because like I'm even finding that in work now, if there's a process or a system and I'm like, oh, how do I work this, it actually saves everyone time if you just ask at the start. um yeah, definitely no stupid questions. It's such a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, I think.
If you could go back 18 months, would you still do the program?
100%, yeah. I'm probably like, I'm so enthusiastic, everyone, but I do think it's an attitude thing. Like if you go in and say, this is so hard, blah blah blah, group assignments are difficult, or if you look at it and say, this is a huge opportunity, which by the way you're putting a lot of money into and time and effort. So if you look at it and say, I can squeeze the most out of this that I can, that attitude is going to bring you a lot further in kind of all walks of life,
Yes.
but especially this. It's actually so funny. I found it when I was looking through my notes. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I think Robert might have said it. It says, push hard now and grit your teeth, which
Yeah.
is a good piece of life advice. But I remember looking at, like, say, the second trimester assignments and even parts of the major report. And it's like, oh, it's such a trek now. But when you just put all the work in, it's so much better to look back on it when it's done.
And your second semester was somewhat different.
Yeah, so
That's when everything happened, wasn't it?
we had the first half of the second semester in college. And I remember I actually need to text Alan this and remind him. And we were planning our charity events and he said, this is maybe the start of March. And he was like, do you think we should put out an email and say, should we make a contingency plan for COVID? And I was like, Alan, what? COVID? Coronavirus here? And I was like, it'll be fine. A week later, college closed, everything closed. Like, so contingency planning is one thing, but it's just funny. Yeah, it changed so quickly.
Yeah. But everybody adapted, didn't they? All
Yeah.
the students. I mean, we had to adapt as kind of staff and lecturers, but you all adapted as well. I think everybody probably achieved more than they ever thought they could.
Oh my God, yeah. Like I live at home here. There's 7 in my family home. And if someone had told me like you'll write an entire research report at home with everyone else at home, like I would never ever have believed you. Um, and it's all testament as well to, like, this is a collective experience. No one is free to do all the things that they used to be able to do. So that I think is a good thing to remember as well. Like everyone's going through the same restrictions and same kind of constraints as each other. So
Yeah,
I actually, if I had to go back, probably one thing I would do would be the class ambassador, apply for that.
yeah.
Probably a bit shy at the start, but it is a really good thing. And I think especially now, it'll be great to even organize like virtual drinks, virtual coffee, something like that.
Yeah,
Have someone kind of leading that. And the other thing I would say is take the Linda's intercultural development program. That was brilliant.
it was good. Yeah.
And I think that's I think completely online, but it'll be great. And I'm sure she'll make it really engaging. But like I thought I was really culturally competent and respectful when I started in Smurfit, and not that I had any big blow ups, but it's really eye opening to see how different cultures like perceive things and work. So really good for career.
I've got three of the students who aren't going to be able to be in Smurfit for at least the first few weeks. One of them will
Okay.
be for the whole of the first term. Any advice for them kind of taking this on remotely, if you like? Because you did
Yeah.
that from home, kind of, in the second half of the term. So,
I would say for video calls, always try and keep your camera on, because it like, and that for the class in general. Like we had some classes where cameras were like kind of on and some were off, and the engagement is just so much higher. Because if you know your camera's off, you can kind of slide off to your phone or
yeah,
maybe go make a cup of tea. But definitely keep your camera on. I'd say get a class WhatsApp group up and running. We used to kind of share PDFs of textbooks and, just reminders of readings and things like that. And you'll also get to know everyone's name by just seeing them pop up.
yeah. Yeah, that
Uh,
has been an advantage of Zoom, hasn't it? Kind of,
yeah,
yeah, when
yeah,
you've
you
got
get to know everyone's
40
name.
names in front of you, you can actually really put names to faces much quicker, which is lovely. Yeah,
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 yeah, but I think that's kind of everything.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's great. That's you're a great ambassador, Quiver, for the
Yeah.
program. Thank you
Actually,
so
I
much.
have one last thing because this is quite important. Don't underestimate yourself, because I remember at the start I was coming in from a non-business background,
Yeah,
and everyone who'd done commerce, I was kind of like, oh, well, they just must know more than me. And to be honest, it didn't put me at a disadvantage.
no,
Um, so don't be afraid if you don't have a business background. And equally, if you do have a business background, it doesn't put you on, any big uh,
still no. You're not ahead of
pedestal.
everybody else, are you? No.
No, because it is kind of like it's so broad, but parts of it are so niche that like I don't think project management is covered very widely anyway in like a general business degree.
Mm,
Um, so a lot of it will be new to everyone. So don't let that worry you.
super. Well, thank you so much for giving up your time this evening. Really
You're
appreciate it, and
welcome.
lovely to see you. Lovely to see you and hear you're doing well. And
Yeah, hope
and
you're
yeah,
doing well too.
yeah, and stay in touch.
I will, yeah, and best of luck to everyone. Have a great year.
Well, thank you, thank you. No, this.